The first essay is upon us! Mwahaha! Whatever will you do? The first essay is built on a fairly simple but still intriguing kind of thought. You're probably used to thinking about the meaning of books, of TV shows, and movies and such, but have you ever really thought about the meaning of place? The first place I really saw getting affected by the whole pandemic was the grocery store. Shopping in the early days of the lockdown order was quite interesting. First, you started to see these feeling sick signs out there. Then you started to see the masks severely recommended. Then I remember that Myers changed their hours so they'd have time to clean everything on a more frequent basis. Um, but the most interesting bit about stores during that whole early part of the pandemic was, and I don't know if you remember this, the utter and complete panic that people had. The first day, I think it was actually the day before UT decided to move all of its classes online. This was in the middle of spring break. I happened to be at the grocery store to pick up some standard groceries, and there were massive runs on a whole lot of things. I went to the toilet paper aisle and it looked pretty much like this. No, actually, this is a lot more, has a lot more stuff than it did there. The strangest things had runs on them. It was about 3 weeks before I could find lentils. I'm a vegetarian. Lentils are fairly important to us, but dried beans gone. There was a massive run on flour and yeast because apparently when the pandemic started, everybody decided they wanted to become home bakers or something. I don't know. Anyway, you saw the massive run on items and you saw people panicking and stockpiling. Why do you need to have a year's supply of toilet paper stockpiled in your house? Well, you don't really, but this is just one of the ways how people tended to react. And the stores had a hard time dealing with it. They started to put limits on the amount of certain items you can get, and they're still that way now. I mean, I was at the grocery store earlier this week, and they still have a limit of one thing of cleaning wipes per person. And that was actually the first time I'd seen cleaning wipes in about 3 weeks. We're getting used to seeing these kind of things sitting all over the place. The squares marked on the ground, how far apart you have to stay from everybody. Um, and it's really changed our experience of going shopping at all, knowing that not only do you have to now gear up to go in anywhere, you also have to make sure you try to stay as far away from people as humanly possible. COVID has done this. It's changed what used to be a normal experience for us into our entry into the petri dish. And people are reacting weird to it. I remember one time I was at a grocery store and I heard somebody who was not wearing a mask saying, I'm getting tired of going out and everybody looking at me like I'm a freak or something. Whether you wore a mask or not has become a point of political pride. I don't know. It's kind of weird. But the grocery store stuff is stuff we've been adapting to. In England this week, there was a artist who held a concert, which was billed as the first socially distant concert. And this is what it looked like. You apparently got to sit in your own individual little fenced off area that was at least 6 feet from everyone else. And apparently, this is what going to a concert looks like now. Sports is back, which is weird because they don't want the crowds in the sporting venues. So this is what they're doing in ballparks now. Cardboard cutouts of people so it doesn't look like the park is completely empty when they're playing things. Going to a baseball game, used to mean something a lot different than it does now. And the fact that they dress it up like this is an interesting one. I'm sure you saw news stories of the people who put a cardboard cutout of the guy from Weekend at Bernie's in one place. I've seen the singer for the band Russian stand in a cardboard stand in one place. My favorite one, though, is what they're doing in Korea in the baseball parks. Yes, stuffed animals. There was a pretty interesting story. Apparently, they're all going to be cleaned and sterilized afterwards and given to orphanages and such. So it's nice, but it's kind of weird to see people playing baseball to an audience of stuffed animals. And it's made us think a lot about how the ballpark is different. Well, these are all kind of big picture things, and I wanted to pull it back to something simpler to demonstrate how place is affected and how place has meaning that can be changed. I've mentioned before that I'm a musician, and one of the first places in the area I played was this club in Bowling Green called Howard's Club H. The bar had been open as you see the sign since 1928. It actually started as a sandwich shop now that I think about it. But it's the rock bar in town. It's the live music venue in town. And I have played there a number of times. My first gig in the state was at this bar. As a musician, this bar has a completely different feel for me than it would be if you were a guy just coming in to have a drink. Because musicians occupy a different space. We're not quite employees, although we're closer to how an employee sees the space than we are as to how a customer sees the space. Part of that is the fact that I've been up on stage there. And being up on stage, you're hired help. You're someone who people sit and watch the whole time. It can get a bit unnerving and a bit weird, but it is very different experience than when I go in socially. When I've gone in there socially after playing there, I'm treated a bit different by the bartenders and the staff than I was before I started playing there. If I was one of the 22-year-olds who go there sometimes, I would have a completely different interpretation of the space than I do now. And since the pandemic, it's also changed things a whole lot because how are you going to play live music if we can't be within 6 feet of each other? On stage, it's not as big of a problem, but I don't want to put my mouth on the microphone that other people have been other have been singing into and getting close to. The whole risk of contact is really kind of weird. Lots of live music venues are having to figure out what else they can do since they can't have live music anymore. And for people who are musicians, bars are one of the few places we're able to play. The COVID issue has really changed us because we can't play where we normally play. The bar becomes now an aspirational place instead of a place of business or the one of the few places where we can have contact through the art. It's kind of like how I feel about karaoke too. And you're going to have to bear with me for a second on this one. I'm used to playing original music to people, and I've seen more than one person who won't go in the bar and pay $3 to see 5 bands that they've never heard of, but would rather go and see karaoke. In other words, listen to people sing stuff that they've heard 15 million times, but sing it very badly. If this bar starts doing karaoke on a normal basis, it's going to strike me as a bit more sacrilege because it was the live music venue. N- Now that you can't do live music, what does a bar like that even mean? The bars are trying to figure it out, just like the ballparks are trying to figure out how to hold sports when there's utterly no one in the stands. And pretty much every other industry that relies on the public is having to change what they are and who they are. Another place that's getting changed by this whole pandemic is the University of Toledo. I mean, we're doing this class online. They're doing their best not to hold big classes anymore. More and more stuff is getting moved online. And there's real rumors going around whether their on campus classes are going to stay on campus for very long. We are in a very disease heavy part of the state. And I believe that Toledo is at this point still in the first or second highest ranked level of danger. It's weird when you go to campus now and you see people walking around with masks. Well, I haven't actually been to campus in a long time because I've been told that I have to wear a mask and I have to get my temperature checked and all that. And since we're doing the stuff online, don't need to. But campus normally has a certain meaning for me that it doesn't have right now because I don't go there anymore and I can't go there anymore. And it's going to have a different meaning for you who are on campus because the gatherings of people aren't going to be the same because there's not as many classes being held there now. It would hold a different meaning for you than it would for me anyway because I'm an employee there and you are students there. You have experiences which I can never actually have of that place. Place is something we don't think about as a subject, but if you take a place and what it means to the group of people who inhabit that space, you can come up with some fairly interesting analyses. And that is the basis behind our first paper, the profile essay. Let's look at the assignment sheet here for a second. Um, Profile essay is a 3-page paper. Due dates are we'll have a pre-writing session on the second Monday of the semester. We'll have a peer review session on the 31st. So by the time we have class on the 31st, you need to have a complete draft of this paper ready to go. It will get turned in on Monday the 2nd, and it will be 75 points. For your first major essay, you will write a profile of a place or event. Your subject must be someone or somewhere or some event that you know personally. You cannot write about a famous location. I've had a student who tried to do the Great Giza Pyramid. Obviously, had never been there though. Some place that you've experienced that has an interesting meaning of some sort, or some event that has a meaning of some sort that you've experienced. Places that have been important to you or events that you have participated in will yield the best subjects. One of the big events around Bowling Green is each year there's at near the end of the summer the Old West End Festival. Lots of art booths, food booths, music people have a giant festival going on in the Old West End. I've played there. It's a much different thing for me playing there than it is for the people who just show up, and it's different for me than it is for the artists. If you write about an event, the event must be one that occurs at a definite place for a particular purpose and that somehow involves a community. It cannot simply be just something that you do. It's a thing. Homecoming is a thing. Festivals are a thing. Concerts are a thing. It's not just the time I walked home and saw a shooting star or something. Places, a specific place. You can't do New York. New York was gargantuan. And it's well too diverse. You can't do just Central Park. Central Park is huge. It's bigger than a lot of cities. You can pick a specific thing. Topics such as the Toledo Polish Festival, a charity walk, a football game would be appropriate because they're definite events that are community based events. My senior year, my brother's wedding would not be appropriate. My brother's wedding isn't a community event, it's a family occasion. Places must be specific rather in general. Keep in mind that the purpose of the profile is to convey a dominant impression about its subject, some single key idea that you want the reader to understand about it. You are not trying to tell someone everything there is to know about the subject or give a simple summary of it. We don't do summaries, we do arguments in here. So you're trying to figure out what's neat, interesting, weird, unusual about this place. What is it about this place or this event that the reader needs to know that they wouldn't be able to guess? And why is it important? You will need to select details about the subject that will help convey the dominant impression. This means you're going to have to leave out some things that are interesting but don't necessarily have anything to do with it. If I'm a musician talking about the meaning this live music venue has for me and why it's an abomination that they have karaoke, the fact that there's a pinball machine in the back doesn't really mean anything for that story. So it wouldn't be included. This means leaving out a lot about the subject that may be interesting but doesn't support your objective in the essay, which is to tell us what's interesting, unusual, weird, notable, whatever. As you consider the central impression you want to communicate about your subject, you will need to think about the audience you wish to reach. Who would enjoy getting to know this place? Who might misunderstand this place? Who might have stereotypes about the subject that you could challenge? Who would find them inspiring? The a key here is, I've said it 3 or 4 times this video, what's neat, interesting, unusual, notable, weird about the place, not the average thing. People go to the grocery store to get food. Yes, I brought up the grocery store because COVID has changed everything dramatically and the massive runs on toilet paper. I think people thought that they'd be doing nothing but sitting around and pooping. Who knows? Um, but it was different behavior than you're normally used to seeing there. Stores in general have become battlegrounds for political points of view. You've seen more than one video about some weird customer who is told they have to wear a mask and either gets into a yelling match or gets into a fight or in some place in Texas shot someone because of it. Um, Going to a grocery store now or any store now can end up having a political ramification that it wouldn't normally have. That stuff's interesting. It doesn't have to be about COVID. In fact, I'm not sure that even most of these will be about COVID. It can be about a different, not normal interpretation of a place. Many students end up working in their off time at Cedar Point. It's a summer employment thing for a lot of high school kids around here. Well, their experience with Cedar Point is a lot different than mine. And to the average person who goes to Cedar Point, knowing how the employees see it might be interesting. So you're going to find a place or an event or something like that, specific subject that has something that the average person wouldn't expect, and you make an argument about it. I brought up my musician karaoke thing a few times, and I think that's a legitimate argument that you can make. This is a place that's normally live music, and the fact that they're doing karaoke now and here goes against the standard purpose of the joint. I know this is the first essay, and you might have issues trying to come up with your subject. If that's the case, come at me with ideas. Talk to people about it. Talk to me. I'm more than happy to give you whatever help and advice I can give. Give me a few ideas, and I'll help you narrow down something specific. So that's a basic overview of our essay one. Don't worry, you're going to have time to work on it. We're going to do a pre-writing session in class. I will be available for questions. I will say that the sooner you get started, the sooner you will be able to get to a draft. And the earlier you get a draft done, the better your paper is going to be. At any rate, I wouldn't panic too much over this, even if you're having problems, because I'm more than willing to give you whatever help you need, and you do have all semester to revise this. We'll talk about the revision procedure later on. Until then, start thinking about paper, and I'll see you in the next video.